John and Mary Jo Tenudo, thanks so much for being with us here at Rebel Force Radio and in the Cantina, especially to talk about this amazing project that you have together, that you've put together, A Wind to Shake the Stars, the complete unauthorized oral history of the Star Wars audio dramas. Again, thanks so much for being here to talk about this book.
Thanks for having us.
So I am unfamiliar of any other book specifically about the radio dramas. And, Star Wars is the most well-documented, most well-covered film saga in history. And the radio dramas are, people discover them. It's like hidden treasure, They can't believe that there's all this extra dialogue and exposition and you're in characters' heads and all that stuff. Why do you think it is that no one has actually documented this thing quite the way you guys have?
Well, I'll tell you, it was quite a journey for us, and we were, we felt very privileged because we were able to, talk to so many amazing people that were involved in it, both in front of the microphone and behind the microphone. And a lot of it coalescing around one of the big themes of the book, which is Brian Daley, who wrote of course, the Han Solo original trilogy of extended universe books back in the late 70s and early 80s. And then, of course, wrote the radio dramas, all three of them. And so really out of that love for Brian, so many people participated in this. One of the drum beats that we kept hearing through the whole process was people saying, well, we wish it was available, we wish it was, because it really isn't. It was on Audible for a little while, a few years ago. You can't really get it there now. You certainly could buy the old CDs secondhand somewhere. But it hasn't gotten the kind of, re-releases like they might do, say, with the extended universe books, or even the kind of legacy books. They're bringing back some of the books that were, from prior to the Disney purchase, and they're putting new editions out and so on. And I just think it's part of it is that availability of it being one of the main reasons that really as many fans who I think would really love it if they knew about it, haven't been exposed to it.
Yeah, and as I said, when people are exposed to it, they just go crazy because there's just so much added stuff. It's almost like a dream director's cut of the films in a lot of ways. But I wanted to ask you about the title, A Wind to Shake the Stars. Where does that come from? It's very poetic.
Yes, well, there has been a slight title change. The cover of the book is going through its final iteration. So the cover that's sort of available now is sort of the temporary cover. It's going to have a different cover, but we decided to change it to The Winds That Shook the Stars because we deal with all three radio dramas. So and there's also there's an appendix that deals with every single audio adventure that involves either an original actor or an actor from the radio dramas. So it deals with more than just the radio dramas. So we felt that it should be a little more indicative of that. But actually, the title and all the chapter titles are riffs on the chapter titles that Brian Daley wrote. So my favorite chapter is the very, very first one, A Wind to Shake the Stars, where you get to know Luke Skywalker as a person on Tatooine, who his friends are, what his daily life is like, with a whole half hour that doesn't appear anywhere except for a little bit of the big scenes, are that were edited that we might have seen into deleted sequences or in the Marvel comics. Those are in there, but most of it's original, and so that we just thought that was a great title because it also I think celebrates Brian, which is a big part of the book.
Oh, yeah. You know, I always hear the announcer's voice saying, "A wind to shake the stars." Yeah. Who is the announcer on the radio dramas?
That's Ken Hiller.
Yes.
In the book, we talk about who they originally wanted, but couldn't get. But they were very happy with Ken Hiller.
Oh, he was great. He was great. And as a youth, I was able to catch the original broadcast of many of these episodes. There were some I missed because, if I remember correctly, in the Chicago area, it aired on WBEZ, which is the local NPR outlet. And it was on at a time, I think it was a Wednesday evening, but it was early in the evening, like 6 o'clock. And oftentimes I would have after school activities that kept me away from a radio, so I'd miss it. Then they would replay it Sunday mornings. It, like, for me back then, as a 6th or 7th grader, it was at the ungodly hour of 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Oh my God, that was like the hardest thing in the world for me to do was get up that early on a non-school day. But I did a few times, and I had very crummy audio recording equipment as a kid. I was just getting into audio recording, and I did capture a few episodes on cassette tape as they originally aired. And the wind that shook the stars was one of them. And great scenes with Luke on Tatooine, hanging out with Windy and threading the Stone Needle at Beggar's Canyon. Just great stuff. And the only time Star Wars storytelling actually got close to that was one issue of the Marvel Comics, the original vintage run, that featured Luke. I think it was issue 15 or maybe 17. And I think it was called Crucible, and it featured a story very similar to A Wind That Shook the Stars, with the youths racing their skyhoppers through Beggar's Canyon. And there was a serious injury that happened there too. Oh, and sand people attacked Biggs. Oh my God. But that's in the Marvel Comics. In the radio drama, there's more conversations, more of Luke yearning to get off planet and go on an adventure. He's actually listening to Imperial military propaganda tapes, and he loved listening to them. They said he would listen to them all the time. But I mean, Luke wasn't about the Empire. He just wanted to get off planet and be a pilot, and that was the only way to do it. And the radio dramas take us there. And also they illustrate some of those scenes that were cut out of the original cut of Star Wars, the Biggs and Luke scenes. And we have a clip of that here. Jason, do you have that one handy?
I believe I do. Let's see. Biggs and Luke. Would it just be called Biggs?
Yeah. Biggs! Okay. I've been holding that in.
We got to talk to Biggs, which was great.
Great.
We interviewed the actor who played Biggs, which was a great thrill.
Wow. You got Biggs.
We also have an appendix in the back of the book with all the radio stations, as many as we could find, and what day and what time they aired. So you'll see, your local station, and you'll see when it was on.
Here's for you. This is for you. There's the if you can't see it, what I'm showing is there's a BEZ button you got.
Yeah.
They had a Meet Darth Vader event to promote the radio dramas back in 1981, and I went there as a kid. I have my picture of me with with the fake Darth Vader, totally fake, completely, utterly, horribly fake Darth Vader costume.
It wasn't even a convincing costume. I mean, there were some good ones back in the day.
It was terrible. But it didn't matter because it was Darth. I didn't care.
Right.
Yeah, and I got his autograph to John.
Did he sign it, Darth Vader?
Yeah, Darth Vader. Yeah,
I love it.
And they gave out a button. It was great. It was that's what got me initially really excited about the radio dramas.
Well, for our listeners who have never heard it, we do have that clip that Jim was talking about. Here's the scene with Biggs and Luke.
Biggs! Yep, they're still there. But I counted 2 earlier. Here, Biggs, you take the macro. See for yourself.
Well, will do.
What do you think, Biggs?
I'm afraid that's no battle up there, Luke.
What?
What? Just a little taste, the big spot.
Yeah.
What was so thrilling about that was the first place you really actually heard those scenes getting acted out, because all of those scenes ended up on the cutting room floor. And we as kids knew about it because of trading cards and stills that ended up in publications and whatnot. And of course, the Marvel comics once again.
I wanted to, again, there's Star Wars fans being born all the time, literally and figuratively, and not all of them have heard about the radio dramas. So can you give us a little history on how this came about? It was 1981, 1983, and then took all the way to 1996 to get the Return of the Jedi. But, looking back, it seems kind of like even in the early 80s, kind of a kooky idea, because radio as a form of drama had been, dead for 35, 40 years at that point.
Yeah, there were only 3 stations playing it.
The idea really was, and again, one of the sort of through lines of the book is how Star Wars, and it's not an exaggeration, Frank Mankiewicz, who was president of NPR at the time, said Star Wars saved NPR. NPR had some success with something called Earplay, which had been directed by John Madden. John Madden would go on to become an Academy Award winner. He directed Shakespeare in Love. But he had been brought over from the BBC, and they were still doing radio dramas in England. And they were brought over here to try to kind of bring a more audience to NPR through something called Earplay. So it was really John Madden, Mel Sarr, who all these names would be names you would hear or see on the CDs or the credits for the radio dramas, and Tom Vagley, who was the sound engineer. And they all worked on Earplay. But Frank Mankiewicz really wanted to find a way to bring even more audio drama to NPR. It was part of a set of plans he had that we detail in terms of how to kind of bring more audience to NPR, because without the audience, they wouldn't get the funding from the government. So they actually turned to an actor that I imagine most people know. He was in The Paper Chase, and John Houseman. He was also the grandpa on Silver Spoons. If you remember.
Great.
Anyway,
great old-time actor. Yes.
Great
we do it the
American
old-fashioned way. We earn it.
Yes.
He was friends with and produced War of the Worlds for Orson Welles. I mean, he had a long history in radio.
Wow. I had no idea.
They turned to him and said, "Do you know who we can help us with a project to make even expand this?" And he had the idea. He was working with a dean by the name of Richard Toscan at USC. Which was George Lucas, by chance, George Lucas's alma mater. And Richard Toscan was very interested in radio dramas. They had a NPR affiliate radio station there, KUSC. And that's kind of where this all started. It was Richard Toscan trying with John Houseman, trying to find a project that would be exciting. And one of our favorite stories is that they were sort of sitting around trying to figure out what to do. And the advice that John Houseman gave to Richard Toscan was make it a scandal. Thinking back to War of the Worlds, right? Make it a scandal. People will pay attention to it. Well, they really had struggled with an idea, and it turned out to be a student named Joel Rosenwig, a former student who had known George Lucas when they were students together, who was sitting in the office just shooting the breeze one day. They were telling him the problem, and he said, "Well, why don't you do Star Wars? Take the most visually dynamic film of all time that only has 27 minutes of dialogue in the whole film, and turn it into a 6.5 hour radio drama with no visuals."
I like that they aimed so low. Like they've got we want to get a film or something and turn into a radio drama. Let's take the biggest movie of all time, because surely they'll say yes.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just a great like set of, in some cases, coincidences, but all the right people kind of being in all the right places, at the right time.
And for the book, we were able to talk to Joel's son, Mark. So we got to interview him about that and about his dad.
Yeah, because his dad went on to become a director. He directed Cagney and Lacey's, but he passed away, unfortunately, Joel, and just a great creative person. Actually, Joel is the person who came up with the idea of putting Tommy, the Who, as a rock opera on stage. It was Joel who staged the very first one at USC. So I think he had that mind of how do you move from one medium to the other medium. He had that kind of creativity, and that was really just a masterstroke idea. And of course, totally controversial because no one thought you could do it.
Who was the one that actually pitched George on the idea? And do you know what his initial reaction was?
Yeah, that was Richard Toscan. Went to actually talk to Carol Titleman. Carol Titleman is a name that people probably, old school fans are maybe more familiar with. She was the head of, basically everything extended, what we would call extended universe today, and the nonfiction books. You see her name on some of the original nonfiction making of kind of projects. And
didn't she write a book herself?
She edited. Yeah, she did. Yeah. You'll see her name on some of the books. And so she was the one that they really pitched to. She, in fact, the book has, Carol's very important. Some of the things that we found in the archives, we have information in the book that are about the films that no one knows about. And that because they're in Brian's archives, and including, we were able to get the interviews that George Lucas does in character in 1977 as C-3PO, as Princess Leia, as Han Solo, telling their stories to Carol Titleman. Carol is interviewing George as if he is the characters. And it's fascinating because you get, Princess Leia has brothers and sisters. It's a whole close universe. Anakin is mentioned in those 1977 by name as the father. It's very, very fascinating. So Brian has all this material like that, but Carol is sort of runs through this whole story. And I think the conclusion we came to, and I think the reaction was George really wanted to do this for several reasons. Did you want to talk about that, or what?
Yeah, because one of the things that really drew us in was generosity, and how George really wanted to bring this film to people who weren't able to see it. So whether it was people who couldn't afford to go to the theater, people who physically couldn't go to the theater, such as the disabled, and so that's why he gave them the rights for $1, and not just the rights, but he gave them the sound effects, the music, and the marketing as well. Really so many resources. And then all the interview material that he gave to Brian Daley.
Right. And also to help his alma mater, right? It was a way to help his school.
To give back to the school.
So yeah, really generosity is a great word.
Yeah.
George is probably one of those kids sitting in front of the radio listening to Little Orphan Annie with the decoding ring on. And he was probably fully immersed in that sort of culture as he was growing up. At least, it was still around a little bit. When was George Lucas born?
Yeah, he's from that generation.
Yeah.
So where they had the radio serials, they had Lone Ranger and Superman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would have been exposed.
He was part of that, what we call in the book sort of the swing generation. Those people who are born when radio was still the primary entertainment in the home, and TV isn't quite there just yet, but kind of creeps in when they're 8, 9, 10 years old. But you still have these two things living next to each other. We were able to get an interview that George did with Jimmy Carter, not the president Jimmy Carter, but the sort of journalist Jimmy Carter, and they talk about radio, and he talks about how radio was an important part of his childhood. So that certainly has to be kind of going through his mind as well. And I think the challenge too. This was the radio drama was to radio what Star Wars was to cinema. It was not going to be done with creaking doors, and it was going to be done with microphones where people were walking in, so it sounded like they were walking in. It was, and that was a big thing Richard Toscan wanted. It was the atmosphere had to be there.
Yes,
it had to feel like a real place, and not and through the sound or whatever, but just really using sound in a unique way. So it was very experimental, much like Star Wars was as a film.
And I think it was pretty bold, the decision made not to include a narrator, just a guy introducing it and then providing a little bit of an outro. But there was no narration throughout. The scenes set themselves up. The dialogue actually served as the narration. And it was done so well that you don't even miss the narrator. And that was a big challenge for us when we were producing the Smugglers series, which were live audio dramas done at Star Wars Celebration, featuring Han and Chewie adventures that were voiced by members of the Clone Wars cast. And so we did these live, and we had live sound effects and everything. And the biggest challenge for us, because we were so inspired by the Brian Daley presentations, the Brian Daley radio dramas, the biggest problem for us was getting by without a narrator. So we had to bring in a narrator. We had Tom Kane, which was perfect. You couldn't ask for anyone better. But it really made me appreciate the way that these radio dramas, the Star Wars radio dramas, were produced without narration.
Yeah, and that's all Brian, right? Brian. They had trouble with one of the stories in the book that we tell is the trouble of there was another scriptwriter, and it didn't go well. That was brought in by the BBC. Originally, the BBC was a partner, direct partner on the project. That would eventually fall apart, but because they weren't sure whether the Americans could do it or not, there was sort of this idea, well, we'll use one of our script writers, and it just didn't work out. Talented script writer, but didn't have the spirit of Star Wars in it.
It didn't have the charm. Yeah.
It was more like Lord of the Rings rather than Star Wars, which lacked that kind of a Western, American Western sort of vibe to it. And so Brian was really brought in again because of Carol Titleman. They were like, well, who can we get? And they were like, well, who writes fast and who writes well? And it was Brian, who had just sort of finished the Han Solo books for them.
What was it about Brian Daley in particular that you think enabled him to get Star Wars like others weren't able to? What was it about him?
Well, he was a fan. I mean, he was one of us. So he saw Star Wars just like we did, was mesmerized by it right away. So he was a fan. He was also very imaginative and creative and really clicked with these characters. And so when he wrote the Han Solo trilogy, I mean, he really was one of the contributors who defined Han Solo. And when you look at his life, he's got some similar traits to Han, the love of fast cars and being a romantic at heart. So he was a fast writer, creative, clicked with the universe, knew the universe. He wrote the Han Solo book. I think the first one, Han Solo stars on, in 6.5 weeks. He wrote that book.
Wow.
And he writes the 13 episodes. I think he wrote that in 11 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He would sit down and he could type for hours. And we interviewed, we got to interview James Lucchino, who was his best friend. And everybody we talked to spoke about how well and how quickly Brian could write.
Yeah, in fact, one of our favorite things is that James Lucchino, who of course went on to write his own Star Wars, many Star Wars books, great books, and would finish Brian's books because, of course, the story and it was something that when we interviewed Anthony Daniels and Perry King and Ann Sachs, Joshua Farden, the tragedy of the loss of Brian, literally on the day they finish recording because of the cancer that was sort of, it's just taking him. It's just this sort of a horrible but beautiful, if that makes sense. It's a horrible but beautiful, poetic, I should say, situation, although it was terrible. But one of our favorite things was that James Lucchino told us that so the two of them saw Star Wars together. They saw it together, and we were able to do research and find out what theater they went to see it. And it was crazy to do. Yeah, and they asked us, was this the theater? He said, yeah. And we're sitting in the parking lot before and went in, and he talked about how that film transformed Brian, the effect that it had on Brian, and I think that is and he was a. We interviewed his sister and his widow Lucia, who herself is an author, and they talked about his childhood, and he was a comic kid. He was the kid who had all the comic books. He was the sci-fi kid. He liked Star Trek. He was he was
the indoor kid. His brother was the outdoor kid, and he was the indoor kid. And
always writing, and he was I think he was able to make that transition, from fan to professional, but he never gave up his love of that universe.
And I want to add too that he served in the military, and so his military background, writing war reports, also helped him to keep that muscle of writing. He was a good student, and then he wrote in the military. And I think too that experience in the military really helped him with the military, the dialogue. When he writes that part, I think he's drawing from his own experience.
What a shame we lost him at such a young age.
49.
Very young.
49.
Yes.
It would have been fantastic to have him still around working on Star Wars, if at all possible. But
and if Del Rey had gotten the rights to write those, like the expanded universe books, Brian would have been the writer.
Brian was going to be what the Thrawn trilogy was originally going to be in Brian's hands, when Del Rey was the one that was looking like it was going to have the resurgent license. So Brian, not that I would want to give up the Thrawn trilogy, of course, it's brilliant, but we include in the book what Brian's story would have been. Because he wrote what that was. He actually wrote a episode of Droids that never got produced.
Actually, six
episodes. An arc.
Four.
Yeah, an arc based.
We summarize them.
And we summarize that in the book.
Well, I think they probably decided that his writing was too good for Droids. They got it, and they go, "Oh, we can't put this guy's story out. He's going to make us all look bad."
It's a great story. It really
good.
is great. It's about, and it's funny. And he Anthony Daniels had told us that Brian was the only one other than George Lucas that he felt could really write for that character, that understood C-3PO, because we one of the things we like I had mentioned, we have this little addendum. We have this addendum in the book, and part of what we talk about, both Anthony's audiobook that he has out, I Am C-3PO, but also he had done a Wonder Column with Dan Madsen, and they recorded that, and he plays C-3PO in this. So we interviewed him both about that and about the radio dramas, because we wanted to include any of those kinds of audio adventures. And he was very much the reason he came back to do Return of the Jedi, was because Brian was writing it, and that's why he came back 13 years later to do the Jedi radio drama, because he really felt that Brian knew the soul of that character. And one of the things we talked about was like how in Empire Strikes Back, in the radio drama, Brian gives C-3PO a purpose, whereas in Empire he's kind of just there to kind of be comic relief, a bit of a nagger, and a coward. And yes, C-3PO is supposed to be cowardly, but not without purpose. And so Brian gives C-3PO a reason for being that way in the Empire radio drama. So he really did know how to write the character. And it was wonderful seeing the collaboration between Brian and Anthony Daniels. In Return of the Jedi, there was a sequence where originally written where 3PO and Boba Fett have this conversation with each other. And Anthony didn't like that because he felt that 3PO knows that Boba Fett's a bad guy and wouldn't have that kind of that casual, almost friendly conversation with him. So that all kind of got altered and changed. But the two of them really just, worked so well together. And in fact, started to work on a comic together that would eventually be produced. But Brian got so sick, Brian wasn't able to finish it.
Oh yeah, and that comic was that the Dark Horse Droids line.
It was it was a Protocol Offensive, I believe was the title.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right. It was a standalone.
I think Ryder Windham came in and finished it, but Brian had plotted it out with Anthony, initially. So we talk about those kinds of things, and a lot of the what ifs. What if Brian had lived? What could have happened? What would we have seen? He had a whole series of books, ideas for books beyond just, even when the license went elsewhere. There was conversations about him coming into that. He was kind of loyal to Del Rey, but he, there was talk about bringing him in on the newer books as well. Just couldn't happen because of the cancer.
If I can, just before we get too far away from C-3PO, and I think it's just great you got Anthony Daniels on the record to talk about this, because his presence adds so much legitimacy to the whole production, to have the authentic C-3PO voice there. And something I love, you brought up Empire Strikes Back, and the thing I love about these radio dramas is the scene so well, like the back of your hand, but occasionally the actor might throw in a little curveball and present a very familiar line of dialogue to you differently than he did in the film, or there might be just a little bit of an addition to a scene or sequence. And so we got a good one here from Empire Strikes Back. This is C-3PO from the Empire Strikes Back radio drama, adding a little extra to a scene very well.
This is all a terrible misunderstanding. I've been shot. Ah!
The little extra scream of torturous pain there. That I don't recall that being in the Empire Strikes Back film.
Yeah, we loved Anthony as fans going into the interview, but when we came out, just the appreciation level of, first, his love of 3PO, genuine, real. 3PO is a person that exists for him. I think that's fair to say. And then also, and the love he had for Brian, I think, was something that we took very much to heart. But just what he went through to play that character, both on film and even in the radio dramas. Did you want to talk about that and being isolated?
Yeah. So Anthony Daniels and Brock Peters were the two that had to be in booths because their voices were augmented. And then Brian would be also there in the studio because he would have to sometimes shorten Anthony Daniels' lines because obviously a droid doesn't breathe in space. And so if the dialogue was too long and you could hear him breathe, they'd have to shorten what he was saying. Right. But when he was doing his dialogue, he would picture in his mind, there's R2 right there. And then he would pause and imagine R2 responding before giving his next line. So for him, again, he's creating in his mind, C-3PO's really there. And so is R2. And Perry King did the same thing. He doesn't have Chewbacca there. He's not looking at Chewbacca, but he has to imagine him there. So they were really good about just creating that environment. And we tell the story like on Hoth, with Han and Luke, who, they're spending that night in that kind of makeshift shelter. And John Madden came up with a great idea of how to get them in the mood to really feel like they're there. So we talk about that in the book. But yeah, they were really good about imagining that they're taking on these roles.
And Anthony, I think he was really the one with the experience. Mm-hmm. So he has that authenticity of C-3PO, but also was able to, show particularly some of the younger actors or a lot of actors being unfamiliar with radio. Josh Farden talks about that, how both John Madden and Anthony Daniels they had both had this tremendous experience within radio. I'll tell you, that was a wonderful interview that we were not thinking we would be able to get John Madden. But Tom Vagley and him are close friends. And I think once people realized that this was really a love letter to the radio dramas and to Brian, everybody came on board. And it was great to talk to John Madden because he knows radio. And so did Anthony Daniels, because he had so much experience in radio as a British actor, and they really helped the American actors who were not as familiar with that. Although they said Mark Hamill was natural; he knew exactly what to do right away.
Mark Hamill was born, I think, many years too late. I think he would have been a vaudevillian. I mean, he would have been, one of those guys that just joined the Stagecoach theaters, traveling throughout the country. I want to talk about the casting because, so George signs off famously for $1. We've talked about Anthony Daniels. We mentioned Mark Hamill, but what was it like then once they had the green light? They had to figure out who's going to play these roles. Was there a desire to just go directly to the film actors by default, or did they want to, go beyond that? How did they approach the casting?
Yeah, they did want to get all the principal actors, and they had Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. They were going to, because they loved their characters. They didn't want someone else to play their character. They wanted to do it, but because of scheduling conflicts, they couldn't do it. So that's why Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher didn't do that.
Raiders is what stopped Harrison from being able to do the radio dramas.
Oh, darn. Well,
Yeah.
I was trying to weigh the two.
Yeah. I think we're okay with Perry King filling in.
Right.
And he did a great job, too.
Yeah.
did
You
a
can
great job.
go on YouTube and you can see his audition.
That's right. He auditioned for George Lucas to play the role of Han Solo.
Yes.
I forgot that. That's very true. He embodies a lot of the characters and qualities you expect from Han Solo. So he would have been an interesting choice, but I don't think anybody's upset Harrison won the role. I certainly am not.
Yeah, so there very much was a desire to have all the film actors reprise it. There's in the Making of the Empire Strikes Back book by Alan Arnold, right? I think it is. Yeah, Alan Arnold. The original old school making a book. The radio dramas are just sort of becoming a thing. And he does ask them in the book about, do you want to play the role? And they everyone, absolutely, because they're they can't see anyone else playing that part. So there really was you can get a little taste of what Harrison Ford would have been like on the radio by checking out the 1-800 telephone calls, that were done.
We've played those before here on the show.
So you get a little idea what the radio Han Solo would have been like if it had been him. But I maybe sacrilege, but I really like Perry King's Han Solo a lot. And he was very generous with his time with us. And one of the questions that we wanted to explore with him was where Harrison Ford had Peter Mayhew with him, which one of my favorite moments in all of Star Wars is just when Han leans on Chewie. in the original Star Wars. I just love that little moment of how easy they are with one another and friends. And I loved how they picked up on that in Solo. And every time Chewbacca puts his hand on Solo, he brushes it away till the end of the movie when Kira betrays him and Chewie puts his arm around him and he lets him. And I just thought that was just brilliant on Ron Howard's part. But anyway, what was it like not to have Chewie there? I mean, you and it was just great to hear the process of acting that goes into radio, because for him, Chewie is, I mean, Perry King loves Han Solo and he loves Chewie. Chewie is his friend. He talks about Chewie as his friend now, that Chewie, and he could see Chewie, even though he could only picture him in his mind, and how important that was to him to be it real, you know, for this, that Chewie is real to him. And so that was just fascinating to hear the difference between, say, film acting, and of course, you know, Perry King knows it all, right? He knows film, TV, radio. He's directed. I mean, he's done every aspect of really that you could do. And he told us great stories about seeing Rocky with his friend Sylvester Stallone at the very first showing of Rocky to the friends.
Whoa!
I mean, just great. I mean, just it was such a thrill. Such a thrill.
I have a friend who may have been in that room. Actually, I might have to confirm with him. But also, speaking of casting, though, you brought up, you talked to Josh, who played Luke in Return of the Jedi. Why didn't Mark Hamill do that? Was it purely scheduling, or was there some other reason?
Yeah, it was scheduling. By that time, you know, there was a 13-year gap, mostly because of economics. There very much was a plan. We include the memos and discuss those in there. They were going to go straight to do Return of the Jedi. There wasn't going to be a gap. Brian even hears about it when he's in another country, very excited about it.
And actually started writing. So when he leaves seeing the film Return of the Jedi, he writes, and he has like the last few sentences, like the last paragraph, he writes that.
Because Luke always has the last line in the radio dramas, and he wrote Luke's last line, and he was able to use that last line 13 years later, which was great, you know.
Wow.
But and it's cool because we have it in his handwriting. We have the line as he wrote it back in 1983 in his handwriting. But but Mark Hamill, it was just that 13 years. A lot of it was, by the way, music rights. A lot of we did not know that going into the project, but the music rights were owned separately for the original Star Wars by 20th Century Fox. They also gave the music rights for $1 an episode, so it cost like $13 to get the music rights. So they donated the music also. Which was a huge thing because, of course, you can't have, how can you have Star Wars, right, without John Williams? So, but it turns out they weren't supposed to do that. There were union issues. Mm-hmm. So the amount of money needed to secure the rights for the music to Return of the Jedi was prohibitive, and that became one of the big stumbling blocks. And Tom vaguely tried to come up with ways to get it done. There was a partnership that was thought about between there is a rival to NPR, and there was this idea of maybe getting the two networks together on this project, and it just didn't work out. And really what happened was the era of CDs in your car. And audiobooks and the sales of the Star Wars and Empire on CD is what said, well, look, this is a viable revenue source. Let's do Jedi. And by that time, though, so many years had passed, and Mark, of course, was doing, you know, a lot of voice acting by this time, even video game acting, things like that. And so he just wasn't available. So what they wound up doing is they really went a lot to LA Theater Works. A lot of the people in Return of the Jedi, Mel Sarr, she held the whole production together. She's so important she was the every time there was a problem, Mel was the one who was solving like logistical problems. And she kind of turned to LA Theater Works as a place to get a lot of the actors. Tom Virtue, who we interviewed, who plays Derlin. Nia Vardalos is in the Star Wars radio dramas.
Right, yeah. My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Right. Yeardley Smith. Smith.
Okay, let's talk about Yeardley for a second. There is something that you probably need to hear. And we had learned about Yeardley Smith doing the voice of EV-99 in the Return of the Jedi radio drama. And so we took the recording into our top secret Rebel Force Radio sound lab and deconstructed it so you can actually hear Lisa Simpson in Jabba's dungeon. So we're going to play this for you. We're going to give you about 30 seconds of the performance. First, you're going to hear the performance as it is played out on the radio drama, without any tinkering or anything. Then you're going to hear the exact same scene played back. And I did tinker with it. And I did remove all of the vocal processing on Yeardley Smith's voice to the point where it sounds like EV-99 is voiced by Lisa Simpson. Okay. So here it is. First, we're going to hear the clip from the Return of the Jedi radio drama, and then we're going to hear it revealing Lisa Simpson in Jabba's dungeon. Whoever would have thunk.
May the Maker preserve us.
What have we here? You are a protocol droid, are you not?
I am C-3PO, human psych.
Yes or no will do.
That is, yes.
How many languages do you speak?
I am fluent in over 6 million forms of communication and can...
Splendid. We have been without an interpreter since Jabba got angry with our last one and disintegrated him.
May the Maker preserve us.
What have we here? You are a protocol droid, are you not?
I am C-3PO, human psych.
Yes or no will do.
That is, yes.
How many languages do you speak?
I am fluent in over 6 million forms of communication and can...
It's unbelievable. Lisa Simpson in Return of the Jedi.
I knew I loved that scene for a reason.
We found her. There she is.
Yeah. So they went. They went to that LA Theater Works, which was, they were doing sort of live radio plays there, and that's how they got Ed Asner to do Jabba the Hutt. I mean, it was all through LA Theater Works, and that's how they got Joshua Fardon too. So that's a great interview. Josh is a huge fan also. Grew up with Star Wars. It was thrilling for him to play Luke. Couldn't believe it. And does a really great job. I mean, I think that's an awfully big set of shoes to fill.
It is.
And to carry that radio drama for a young actor at that time for him. So if you're a fan of, it's Frasier, I think. He's in a scene in Frasier when they deliver something to Niall's apartment. So if you want to see Joshua in another role there, that's one of our favorite other roles that he has.
All right, well, we'll keep our eyes open for that. And I forgot about Ed Asner as Jabba the Hutt. That's a really nutty performance there. There are some other actors involved in the radio dramas who are famous for performances outside of Star Wars. Like in the very first one, in the Star Wars radio drama, you have David Alan Grier, legendary comedian. He is just playing some background characters. I think he's the one who introduces Han and or Chewbacca to Ben Kenobi. So we have a clip, we have audio highlights, of course. And so here's David Alan Grier in The Cantina.
It was directed by my acting teacher from Yale. His name is John.
No. That's not it. That's not it. You want to look at Star Wars radio drama.
There it is. Okay, I got it.
Hey, Chewbacca, come here. I got somebody for you to meet.
Here's your drink, Ben.
Oh, thank you, Luke.
What do you say, Chewbacca? This fellow here's looking for a ship.
No, just one quick trip.
You understand the Wookiee language?
Some, yes. Thank you, friend. You've been of great assistance to me.
Yeah, sure, old-timer. Glad to oblige. Guess I'll be shoving off. Clear skies to you, Chewbacca.
Clear skies to you. I love that. But that's David Allen Greer, legendary comedian, and he appeared on WGN Radio on Wendy's show, and he talked a little bit about the Star Wars radio drama and how he got the role.
It was directed by my acting teacher from Yale. His name is John Madden. You know, he did Shakespeare in Love.
Yeah.
But that's how I made my money. I went out to L.A. and he said, look, I can hire you, do some bit parts because I'm doing this radio version of Star Wars. And I was like, that would be awesome. And it was great. It was like $800 for 4 days. And I was so happy.
Does that paycheck add up to your research, Tenudo?
Yeah, because he was making $25 a day before doing this.
Oh, so that was a big score. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was his big break. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? And then, of course, in Empire Strikes Back, John Lithgow is Yoda. How did that come
That's
about?
another weird one.
Yeah, actually, Mark Hamill wanted to be Yoda.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Yeah, and they just I think John Madden felt too much on one actor, right? To go back and forth, and a nightmare of editing for them. Okay, So he was out to dinner. John Madden had directed and was friends with John Lithgow, and John Lithgow was talking about he would do imitations of like Sesame Street characters for his kids, and also and he said, well, I do Yoda, and does it, and it like as a joke. And John Madden's like, all right, well, let's have you do Yoda. So that's how he became, and he did it because his friend John Madden asked him to do it. So,
just because he could do a Yoda impression.
Yeah.
Because he could do all the he could do the
John
Sesame
Lithgow.
Street impression.
Right.
Yeah, it's it was great. They of course they wanted to get Frank Oz, but Frank Oz was directing and doing so many different things that it was just, and responsible for the Muppet Empire at that time also. So it couldn't happen.
What was the biggest surprise that you uncovered as you were putting this book together? What was something that just really shocked you that you just never would have guessed?
Well, I think seeing on the one hand with Brian's part of the story was how much he made that we've never heard of before, like how much he had planned to do, all the projects that he had lined up for Star Wars, and the conversations that were going on about what he could and couldn't do, and really everyone being robbed of those great stories because of the cancer. That was a big surprise because, you heard about this or that, like Rebel Mission to Ord Mantell, which we consider sort of episode 0. I have it here, right here, the record.
The kids' book.
Record.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. This is also by Brian, and it's it doesn't have the voice actors from the radio dramas, but it kind of serves as episode 0 of Empire Strikes Back, and it fits into the continuity. That was originally an idea for Droids, the animated show, and then it became, but then of course there was no. They weren't going to do Luke and Han and, all that type of thing within Droids. It wouldn't have worked with the continuity. So then it becomes something else. And there, just finding out all these what ifs was a big part of it. In terms of the radio dramas themselves, I think the biggest surprise for me was learning that just the spirit of cooperation that existed, that for everyone who worked on this, they saw this as something special. Anthony Daniels talks about that he called this a really good thing, that this was a good thing. It was, and it doesn't just mean quality. He means, almost morally, like it was done for the purpose of charity. And you don't get a whole lot of that, in the world of, Hollywood and merchandising and all of that. And that I think everyone recognized that. We asked that question of everyone, and everyone had that same feeling. And that's why they keep coming back to it, even though, the pay wasn't great and, it was the chance to do something special that helped people, and to learn how many fans who are blind, who for them this is Star Wars, and was
Wow.
and in a way that Star Wars was not. You can watch it and put on the, in today's world, you can put on the closed captioning, and you can get some
descriptive
descriptors,
tracks and things like that,
tracks
yeah.
and things. But that, like with the narration, it breaks up the feeling of it, and not that the radio dramas, didn't do that. And then I think, I don't know if are you thinking of the story? But
Yes,
yeah, so
that's-
I'm going to let Mary Jo tell her thing. Okay.
So we were interviewing Anne Sachs, who plays Princess Leia, and she was joined with her son. So we were talking to the two of them at the same time. And there's this really moving part in the interview where her son tells her for the first time that what it was like growing up with Princess Leia as your mother. And he was listening. They were all driving. They were going on vacation, and they were listening to I think they were listening together to the radio dramas. And in the interview, when we were interviewing Anne Sachs, he tells his mother what it was like to hear the torture scene. And she had never known that, how it affected him, because he's listening to this happen to Princess Leia, but it's his mother, and how that affected him. So we included that in the book. We included their dialogue. They're talking for the first time all these years later, because he's a grown adult, and he's talking about, he was a young boy listening to that.
My God. And I was taken aback the first time I heard it. And I was also like in the 6th grade, 11, 12 years old, somewhere in that ballpark, and hearing what goes on in the cell block once the door closes and Darth Vader is in there with the torture droid questioning Princess Leia. The agonized screaming, I mean, the pleading, it's all there, man. It's all there. And it's actually brutal because Vader's yelling at her and she's screaming and the torture droid is there, and it's so over the top. Maybe even a little too over the top, but I could imagine if that was my mom and I was hearing that would be terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And that's the only scene that got a negative letter. They got so many letters and so many phone calls. NPR couldn't even answer all the phone calls that they got. They got more than 55,000 phone calls. They couldn't handle all that. But that was the only scene that got any negative response.
Amazing. I could see why, because it's audibly graphic and torture scenes tend to be. And so that's a really interesting story, because I've, like I said, always been taken aback by that. And I'm so glad your book addresses that. And it's great news that there's actually going to be a definitive account of this incredible moment in Star Wars history, a win to shake the stars. That's the great news. The bad news is we got to wait till July to actually get our hands on this thing. I want to read it now. Right now.
Yeah, COVID was the pandemic really affected, obviously so much in the world. And one of those was just the publishing schedules. Probably the least important of the things that the negative effects that it had. But because we had kind of hoped to get this out last year for everybody, but it just wasn't possible with all of and part of it was the research was, you couldn't go and do the research like you would traditionally do it. We couldn't go to Brian's, which we could have, but we couldn't go to Brian's house, which is all exactly the same. His widow has kept it exactly the same as when he passed away. His desk is still there. His typewriter is still there.
Files, everything.
Files. The cute thing is she's a historical novelist, and she used a computer to write. Brian was a science fiction author and loved old old typewriters. And so only reluctantly went to the world of electronic communication towards the end. But we couldn't go to Maryland and go to the archives that he has there, and it all had to be done remotely. So it just wound up taking a long time to do that research. And but it was worth it, because that extra time, I think, gave us time to expand it, to say, there's even some of the kids' books, the kids' audio records, the book, you read the book and you listen to and you turn the page.
Read along.
Some of the read alongs that were done in the 90s were done with the voice actors from the radio dramas doing the roles. So you've got Josh Farden and Perry King doing those, and we wanted to include those. We thought, those are little side miniature. If you really get into the radio dramas, these are the other things you want to explore.
I used to have every word of those memorized with the little 45s.
Yeah, sure.
I had those.
Didn't Corey Burton, who became a very famous Star Wars voice artist, the voice of Cad Bane, among many others, he was Luke Skywalker, I think, in the original Empire Strikes Back read-along.
Yes, he's on several of those. It's amazing when you see the names of cropping up on some who worked on these, because really, when you're kids, we never really look at the credits.
We don't look at the credits. No, I don't even know if there were credits.
Right. And you'd have to sometimes look on the record, to see the credits or whatever. And you didn't do that. You just threw it on the player. So that was an eye-opening experience to see who was involved and with some of those. Even just one of our other favorite stories has to actually do with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Tom Vagley would go on to do the audio, the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark that was done. There was a story of Star Wars that you could listen to before we had VHS, right? You got Roscoe Lee Brown narrated it, and it was the story of Star Wars, and it was 45 minutes long, and you got it on cassette tape or on record or whatever it was. And they did that for Raiders, but they wanted to do it without narration and only using sound. So if people have never heard the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's amazing. It won a Grammy. There's no narration. It's all through sound. And the person who made it is Tom Vagley, who was the sound engineer and editor on all the 3 Star Wars radio dramas.
Wow. There you go.
And he told us about, there's great stories, we won't spoil, but about Ben Burt and the sound effects of Star Wars, just great stuff. But the one story we really liked that we want to share is he was asking, Ben Burt was asking Tom Vagley, well, what do you think the sound of the Ark opening was? And he was like, I don't know, he's trying making all these guesses. I finally think. So Ben Burt takes him into the bathroom. It's the lid of the toilet. That's the sound of the Ark. Just... stories like that are priceless, right?
All the romance is gone now.